Ancient wisdom and modern science. In a world where new discoveries are made every day, it's easy to forget that some of the most profound questions about the nature of reality were asked thousands of years ago. Today, science is illuminating what was once darkness. The microscope reveals invisible life. The telescope peers into the universe's past, and algorithms predict our behavior. But is everything we learn really new? More and more often, researchers, philosophers, and visionaries ask themselves one perverse question. Doesn't modern science sometimes resemble a map that leads us along the path of long-discovered knowledge? Is it possible that ancient civilizations, without computers, satellites, and laboratories, had intuitive and perhaps even practical access to knowledge that we are only just guessing about? In this series, we'll look at 7 extraordinary areas where ancient wisdom seems to meet modern science. But we won't be rehashing stories about pyramids or zodiacs. We'll look deeper to Sumerian tablets, Vedic verses, pre-Columbian calendars, fractal patterns in nature, ancient healing systems, and how they impact genetic, neurological, and physical science research today. This will be a journey through knowledge that does not age with time, knowledge recorded in stone, sound, symbol, and flesh. We do not ask whether the ancients were wiser. We ask, what exactly did they know, and where from? Is it possible that our greatest discoveries do not so much open new doors as reopen those that have already been opened? And if so, who closed them? Sumerian Code of Knowledge, the beginnings of science in Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, is the cradle of civilization. But it is also something more. The place where one of the first known concepts of systematic knowledge arose. The Sumerians, who inhabited this area 6,000 years ago, not only built cities and temples, but also created a surprisingly advanced system of recording, measuring, and observing. Thousands of records have been found on clay tablets, not only of myths, but also of mathematics, geometry, and astronomy. They used a sexagesimal system. It is thanks to them that an hour has 60 minutes, and a full circle has 360 degrees. Interestingly, their division of time and space has survived in many aspects to this day, although few people are aware of its origins. The Sumerians also made incredibly precise observations of the sky. Their priests, who were also astronomers, could predict lunar and solar eclipses and record the cycles of the planets. They developed the first known calendars, which were based on a combination of the lunar and solar cycles, something that required years of observation and a perfect system of recording data. Their mathematics is no less astonishing. The tablet known as Plimpton 322 contains a set of numbers corresponding to Pythagorean triples, 1,000 years before Pythagoras was born. This is evidence that the Sumerians used geometry in a practical as well as a theoretical way. For them, number, rhythm, and time had not only a scientific dimension, but also a spiritual one. Knowledge was not so much a collection of facts, but an attempt to understand the order of the world, the divine order. In their footsteps, science and the sacred were not separated. Perhaps that is why what they left behind survived for so long, recorded in a code that we are still trying to fully decipher. Ancient India, sound, consciousness, and reality. In ancient India, a tradition of thought emerged that not only embraced religion and ritual, but also probed the nature of reality with a precision worthy of modern philosophical and physical science. The Vedas, some of humanity's oldest texts, contain not only hymns and prayers, but also complex concepts about matter, energy, time, and consciousness. One of the central concepts is nada, or primordial sound. According to tradition, it was from sound, especially the first sacred tone Om, that the entire universe emerged. Sound was seen not as an acoustic phenomenon, but as a primordial vibration from which everything originated. Although this sounds metaphysical, modern physics now studies phenomena in which vibration and resonance play a key role. For example, in string theory, which assumes that elementary particles are differently vibrating strings of energy. Indian sages also created subtle models of consciousness. The Upanishads describe the existence of different levels of perception, from the sensory, through the mental, to the transcendental. For them, Man was not just a body, but a complex energy system in which consciousness played a superior role to matter. Today, neuroscience is beginning to recognize that consciousness cannot be easily reduced to chemical reactions in the brain. Theories are emerging that suggest its fundamental nature. The idea of cyclical universes, in which eras, yugas, follow each other, is particularly fascinating. Cosmic cycles, billions of years old, today resemble hypotheses about a pulsating universe, expanding, collapsing, and being reborn. What modern cosmology formulates using equations, ancient Hindu thinkers described in the language of myth and intuition. But perhaps they were talking about the same thing. Pre-Columbian America, knowledge hidden in stone. Before the first Europeans arrived on the American continent, there were civilizations of astonishing knowledge and precision that still inspire respect among archaeologists, astronomers, and engineers. Maya, Olmec, Toltec, or Inca. Each of these cultures left behind traces of advanced knowledge of nature, time, and construction that defy simple explanations. The Maya developed one of the most precise calendars in history, based not only on the solar cycle, but also on the lunar cycle, Venus, and other planets. Their ability to predict eclipses, equinoxes, and conjunctions of celestial bodies was astonishing. Even more intriguing, their calendars also had a spiritual and cosmic dimension. For the Maya, time was not linear, but cyclical, with events repeating themselves over long periods of time called baktuns. In Tiwanaku, in present-day Bolivia, there are megalithic structures whose age and precision of construction remain a subject of dispute. Some of the stone blocks are so precisely fitted that it is impossible to insert a knife blade between their joints. To this day, it is not known what tool was used to cut them, since no traces of such advanced technology have been found. Others, like the Incas, are surprisingly knowledgeable about biology. Their terraced farming systems tested different climates and altitudes, leading to the domestication of hundreds of plant varieties, potatoes for example, in a way that resembles today's botanical laboratories. In the center of Moray is a circular set of terraces that some researchers believe to be an ancient research station for experimental crops. Pre-Columbian civilizations did not create telescopes or microscopes, but their knowledge was deeply rooted in observation and experiment. Perhaps they did not need modern technology. All they needed was stone, time, and the astonishing precision of the mind. Egypt and the geometry of life, mathematics that lives. While the pyramids continue to attract the attention of researchers and travelers, this time we will focus on something more subtle, how the ancient Egyptians saw the world through proportion, patterns, and geometric order. Their approach to mathematics was not just practical, it was also philosophical, even spiritual. One of the key concepts in Egyptian thinking was harmony. Everything, from temples to the human body, was supposed to be proportionate. The golden ratio, known as the golden number, appears in architecture, art, and iconography. The Egyptians seemed to believe that a specific arrangement of lines, angles, and relationships between dimensions not only reflected the order of nature, but also reinforced it. For them, so-called sacred geometry was the language of divine order. Figures such as spirals, triangles, and circles appeared for a reason. They were meant to represent movement, cycles, and the relationship between earth and heaven. For example, in the Eye of Horus symbol, each element corresponded to one of the human cognitive abilities and had a mathematical value, together creating a whole that was almost equal to one. Modern science is now finding the same patterns in nature. Fibonacci spirals appear in shells, plants, and galaxies. Fractal patterns can be seen in trees, lungs, and nervous systems. Molecular biology examines the presence of symmetry in DNA structures, and mathematicians see geometric principles in the behavior of complex systems. What for the Egyptians was a manifestation of divinity, today becomes evidence of the existence of universal rules governing the world. And although the methods have changed, the goal remains the same: to understand the hidden order that connects all life. Spiritual medicine, body and mind as a system. Ancient cultures did not separate mind from body, soul from health, emotions from physiology. Healing was a holistic process, encompassing the whole being of a person, not just their symptoms. Although for centuries this approach was considered unscientific, modern medicine is increasingly returning to the idea that health is a dynamic balance between consciousness, body, and environment. In many traditions, from Native Americans to Siberians to African healers, illness was seen as a signal of a disruption in human harmony. Rituals, songs, herbs, dance, and prayer were not merely symbolic. They were intended to restore balance in the spiritual and emotional realms that affected the body. Shamans did not treat symptoms, they healed the soul. Today, science is investigating how the psyche affects the body. Psychoneuroimmunology shows that stress, anxiety, and trauma affect the functioning of the immune and hormonal systems. It is believed that chronic mental stress can contribute to the development of autoimmune diseases, cancer, as well as depression and heart disease. Epigenetics, on the other hand, shows that our emotions and environment affect the expression of genes, which ones are activated and which ones are silenced. This means that we are not just victims of heredity. We have a real impact on our health, also through our lifestyle and internal state. Modern integrative medicine increasingly combines pharmacology with relaxation techniques, meditation, conscious breathing, and body work. This is not a return to magic. It is an attempt to create a more complete picture of the human being. So perhaps the ancient practices were not superstition, but a premonition of what we are proving today, that man is a system, not a collection of parts. Are we discovering something new or just remembering the old? Modern science is often likened to a lantern that dispels the darkness of ignorance. But what if certain paths were once lit, and we are merely relighting forgotten torches? Throughout this story, we saw how different cultures, separated by oceans, languages, and eras, developed systems of knowledge that not only stood the test of time, but are surprisingly relevant today. The common denominator was not a specific technology, but a way of looking at the world as a whole, full of connections, cycles, and principles that are worth understanding rather than conquering. Today, in the age of electron microscopes and space telescopes, we are beginning to see what ancient cultures sensed intuitively. That time is not always linear. That sound can organize matter. That consciousness is not simply a product of neurons. That mathematics does not describe the world. It constructs it. This is not a return to superstition. It is an expansion of the definition of science. This is not about mythologizing the past, nor about depreciating progress. It is about something more subtle. The question of whether science and wisdom were not once closer to each other than they are today. Isn't development not only about creating something new, but also about remembering what was once lost? Perhaps the greatest discoveries lie not in the future, but in the past. In texts, rhythms, stones, and patterns that have been saying the same thing for centuries, only in a different language. What do you think about it? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe if you want, and see you in the next episode.